Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to What is Going Om, for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Times flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. There is a myth that's often erroneously attributed to Einstein, which states that we humans generally use only 1/10 of our brains. Science has debunked that one now. What isn't a myth is that we humans generally use only a very small proportion of our innate skills and capacities. Why is that? And how can we change it? Rosy Aronson, PhD, is the creator of the globally loved Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck, an inspirational artist, author, teacher, and blossoming guide with a master's in expressive arts therapy and a doctorate in intuitive listening and the creative arts. Her mission is to provide empowering tools to help people awaken to their gifts, bloom into their authentic selves, and participate in making our world a kinder, healthier, and more collaborative place. Rosy Aronson joins me now to discuss how we can connect with our inner wisdom keeper, utilizing such time-tested tools, teachings, and programs as the 64 Faces of Awakening, the Wheel of Integrity, the Gene Keys, and the Dream Ark program, which decodes the secret meanings of animals and their role in our awakening. Rosy Aronson, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandie. I always love to hear your introduction, how you're going to start. I'm like, oh, interesting, with the 10% of the brain. Okay.
Well, it's true though, isn't it? I mean, how many of us use the four capacities that we have? Do we even know we've got them?
Yeah.
Many don't. Yeah. And that's exactly what your work is all about. That's what the Gene Keys is all about. Us learning more about who we are and what we've got access to. Yeah. And we all need that in this particular time.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've designed and created an incredible, opus of work, with all of your transformation offerings over the years, books, courses, art, film, global outreach projects, and your most recent collaborative project with Richard Rudd, founder of the Gene Keys, which is the Dream Ark program. And we'll talk about that more later. But the purpose of everything you do is really to help us awaken to our inner wisdom and blossom into our authentic selves. But what I want to know is, what does that term authentic really mean? Because we hear it so much. And how do we know our authentic self? How do we know when we're being authentic?
Oh, that is such a good question, Sandie. And, in some ways you can say that there really is no self and that we're completely impacted by the moment and our environment. And the self is an illusion and on one plane. But I think on the plane that you're asking, I guess like even right now, for example, right, I could respond and try to be an expert. Like I could kind of show up and try to give you the answer that you want, as opposed to just allowing myself to be the jumble of feelings and and inspirations and insecurities that also compose the rosiness that I am, and just respond in the way that feels most real to me. And in a way, like when I think about authenticity, I think of like permission giving, just like giving ourselves permission to show up as we are, how we're feeling in the moment, and let that be okay. And often what happens is when we let ourselves do that, even if that means, like, let's say you're going to get up and you're going to speak in front of hundreds of people, and you kind of have this sense of what you're supposed to talk about, or maybe you've rehearsed it a million times, but your body is like flooded with nervousness, then to be authentic would be just to stand up and acknowledge, right now my body is feeling flooded with nervousness, and I'm really excited to give this speech, but I just need to presence that first. And as soon as we do that, something falls into alignment inside of ourselves. I don't even know how to say it. It's a feeling of relaxation, of I am okay. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to know it all. I can start where I am and allow something to unfold from there. And it's an art form, really, to give ourselves that kind of permission to be ourselves, no matter where we are, no matter who we're with, no matter what the expectations are, or our perceptions of what those expectations might be of us. And actually, I mean, we hear this, like you say, it's such a cliche, right? We know that everybody is unique and we all have our, a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm not an artist, right? Because I can't draw something to look exactly like something else. But we're all artists of life, and we're all making it up as we go. And we all have very unique capacities, and we have a whole life experience that has given us a very unique set of skills and perspectives, prisms on life. And the more we give ourselves permission to be who we are and say what's coming up for us, it just starts to flow out.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I mean, it's really about being real, being yourself, as you are in that moment, not editing yourself, not, pretending to be dumber than you are for other people's sake, or brighter than you are, and just going with the flow, I guess.
That is so true. And that
Yeah.
brings up this thing about like being authentic too. If you think about young and about shadows, and it's about becoming whole. So it's about integrating those parts of us that when we grew up, we learned were forbidden or not okay, or we get kicked out of the tribe if we express those qualities. And a
Mm.
lot of us think about shadow, we think about our anger, we think about, our domination or some negative qualities. But our shadows can also be our light, it can be our joy, it can be our like what we would call too muchness a lot of the time when we're around sort of mainstream environments that want us to kind of be compliant and just kind of fit into the rules. So our light also can be our shadow. And the more aspects of ourselves, the more of a repertoire we explore and we invite in and we lean into and are okay with, the more we become whole beings. And the wholeness is also another expression of authenticity, I would say.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
where we're not casting anything out, we're not rejecting any part.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah. Very important. So you've had an adventurous life. You've spent time in Spain as an exchange student. You journeyed to the Swiss Alps for a Ramdas and Jai Atal retreat. You studied and taught a version of the artist's way in Copenhagen. You've meditated. You've done primal screaming, water rebirthing. You've had many spiritual highs, and also, as you admit, many spiritual bypasses along the way. So tell us a little bit about your journey to discovering your inner wisdom keeper and your authentic self.
Oh my gosh. You did a really good job there. You just gave like a nice little, like all these little highlights. That's the thing too. Often on social media, we get each other's highlight reels. We don't get the low light reels. A lot of the time, our life is made up of those as well. God, I don't even know how. Will you help me? Will you ask me a little more specifically what you're wanting?
Do you remember a moment when you were aware that you were tapping into, connected to your inner wisdom keeper? One defining moment, or was it a gradual, prolonged journey and a gradual understanding that came to you?
Yeah, I'm definitely in the long journey camp. There was not one moment. And I would say, actually, I started as a young girl trying to cope with a complicated family dynamic. That's also the case too. Often the shadows reveal the gifts, right? So,
Yes.
I had a very loving family, a very resourced family, and also a very wounded family in a lot of ways. And I think because we had such a big range. Let's put it that way. It's not like it was, all abuse or anything like that, right? It was a lot of resource and a lot of wounding. And so from a very early age, I think I began to do that work of disentangling, of like discerning what is the baby, what is the bathwater, where is the love, where is the wound. And that started very early on. I mean, even, my mother is a very sensitive, very philosophical, psychologically minded woman, and very compassionate, especially for perpetrators, interestingly enough. So she was always, from a very young age, telling me people don't always act in a way that they intend. They don't mean to hurt. They don't mean to cause harm. They feel insecure or they feel guilty or they're doing the best that they can, but they came from a difficult background. And I think I can remember a conversation with her when I was 4 years old about this, and really already starting to learn not to take people's behavior at face value, but look behind that and see where the wounding might be sourcing that behavior. And so it took me a long time also to get to a place where I realized just because I can understand why someone might be treating me badly doesn't mean that it's okay that they treat me badly. So this is a part of, like, this is just an example of how the wisdom started getting more nuanced over time. I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like I've been working on this my whole life. I was drawn to psychology very, very early on, also drawn to spirituality. I was very into dreams. I mean, I had huge dream life ever since I can remember, and always felt that my dream life was more real than than this 3D world. And ever since I can remember, I mean, I was studying the human psyche, and also feeling like I would go to, let's say, my family. I grew up in a Jewish background, and we went to Reform synagogue, and what I loved about it was the humanitarian aspect, the very deep social values that were inside of that particular form of Judaism, but I didn't feel spirit. And I think part of my inner wisdom keeping journey also involved seeking out places and conditions under which I could feel visceral sense of spirit coming alive inside of me. And that was often not through organized religion, but more through kind of ecstatic experiences, the creative arts. I could disappear into a painting or into a song or into a dance, especially if I was blindfolded. You know, anytime I remove my head, I would feel much more connected to spirit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I mean, I like you, right? We've been through so much. We've explored so many things, but maybe that first, maybe it was like the conditioning of compassion that started very, very early. That was the beginning. And then it took a long time to also cultivate compassion for myself.
How would you define the inner wisdom keeper?
Oh, well, you know, I really like Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys. He likes to talk about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And knowledge, you know, knowledge is out there, right? It's sort of
Yeah.
like you can read it, you can get it from a book, someone can give you some advice, and you take it in, and you kind of like, you can stack it up in your libraries of, like, I don't know, objective thoughts and ideas and knowledge and theories. But wisdom is something we all are. It's something we all contain within us, and it just has to be called out. It just has to be discovered. And when I think about wisdom, I think of the connection between intelligence and love. Like when the beauty of the mind is used in service of the heart, then I think we're entering into wisdom
Mm.
territory.
Do you
But
think the inner wisdom keeper is the driver? You know, always nudging us, pushing us to connect to it, to expand, to grow, and you know, to align with spirit, align with our soul.
yeah, if we listen, absolutely.
Mm.
And probably, yes, like you're saying, the inner wisdom keeper has a direct line to the soul or the oversoul or even beyond the soul, like
Yeah.
the one point that connects us all. It's sort of something that lives inside of us that is directly connected with that. And if we can get quiet enough and listen, then yeah, it is absolutely always there guiding us.
Mm.
Always. Yeah.
You studied, taught, and wrote about human design,
Mhm.
and you've studied the gene keys, and you are very much involved with that. What drew you to the gene keys?
Okay, so I'll start with human design because I studied human design first. My 20-year-old daughter was just born, and I went to a friend's house, and there was this very strange piece of paper on her like dining room table that had like this body graph on it, this interesting graph with little triangles and centers. And it wasn't the usual, you know, chakra centers that's just vertical. It had other centers coming out with all these channels. And I'm like, what's that? And my friend Val Tate, she told me, she said, this is something called human design. It's really interesting. And that was it. I mean, I got a reading from myself, and then I got a reading from my husband at the time and my daughter. And next thing you know, I'm like giving readings to everybody I know. It was just, there was something about a graph that showed the intersection between those places where we're open to conditioning and our true nature, and how to make authentic decisions, not based on our conditioning, but based on this very unique, you know, convergence of soul and body. That just completely fascinated me, and I dove real deep, real fast. And it was while I was studying human design that I discovered Richard Rudd, because he also was very involved in the human
Yeah.
design world, and he wrote a book, and I loved the way he wrote. Ra-Uru was the man who originally brought human design into the world, and I loved him for a completely different reason. But Richard is a poet. He's a poet at heart. And
He's a bard.
he's a bard. He's a bard, and his writing was just pulsing with love and compassion and creativity and a whole other level of synthesizing. So I just became like a Richard fan. And I remember just every once in a while I would kind of Google his name, what's Richard Rudd up to, and nothing would show up. And then once I saw a placeholder website, and it said Gene Keys coming soon. And so I just waited until something populated that website. And then I think it was in 2010, I went to my first Gene Keys retreat in Mount Madonna Center in close to Santa Cruz in California. And ever since then, I was completely gripped. I had the book, and it's like completely in tatters now because I had been through it so many times, and I've been to many retreats, and then became more and more involved as I got. I think. I don't know. I've been helping them out in some ways, just for free, for fun, like the Gene Keys community, just in terms of like human relations work. But it was when he invited me to partner with him around the Dream Ark that I became much more involved, and that was in 2015. And that was because he probably had heard about me through the Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck, which started out as just an art project for me, but ended up integrating the Gene Keys into it. So that's probably how he discovered me.
Isn't it interesting how, you talk about blossoming. I mean, first came human design.
Yeah.
Richard was involved in that. Then the inspiration of that, grew and grew and grew, and it expanded to become, and he produced the Gene Keys. Then he's produced various other things. You've produced the 64 Faces, inspired, and that each one of those 64 faces connects to one of the Gene Keys. And, it makes you think, well, how far can this go? What else can it give birth to? But tell us a little bit about your 64 faces and its connection to the Gene Keys.
Sure. Okay, well, in the beginning, it had no connection to the Gene Keys. In the beginning, it was literally a personal healing practice. I had a full private practice at the time, just working as a therapist, expressive arts and drama therapist. And I mean, things are crazy now, but things were pretty crazy in the world at that time, and the divisiveness, I was just feeling it more and more, just like spread around the globe. And I was devastated. I felt this deep sorrow and despair on behalf of humanity. And at the same time, I was dealing with a lot of economic stress in my own life. And I had very little time to myself other than being of service to others. And so I just, my husband at the time, Kim, and Maya, my daughter, said, Rosy, do something, with your art, right? Because I was totally neglecting my artist self. And they said, they took me to an art store, and I'm like, we have no room in our house for me to do my big, wild, crazy paintings. They're like, just do something simple. So I got a pad of paper and a black marker. And I just started doodling. And it was out of that deep doodling process, and I would light a candle and I would listen to music, and sometimes I would meditate, that the 64 Faces of Awakening came. And it wasn't a project. There was no idea. This is, again, authenticity, right? There was no agenda. I was just finding a way to nurture myself. Out of that, something grew. And in the beginning, it was just normal doodles. And then I said, what would happen if I doodled inside of a face? And so I doodled inside of a face, and that face transmitted so much love to me. And basically was telling me, look, I've been through it, Rosy, but I've gotten to a place where I know everything's going to be okay, and I love you. That was basically the essence of the face. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I'm like, who else might want to come? And so then I started calling in beings. And again, they weren't planned. I would sometimes get a feeling for a story or a part of the world that this person was coming from. And every time a new face came, they came from a different background, a different culture, a different ethnicity, a different religious background, but they all moved through pain and suffering and came to a place of wisdom, compassion, and trust. And that was the one thing they all had in common. And then they just kept pouring through. Like, this took a while. It's like at least over a year that I was doing this and meditating with them and receiving them and getting a sense of their story and how they came to be so full of compassion. And then I'm like, God, I was maybe like 45, 50 in. I'm like, how many of these am I going to do? And by then I was already very into the gene keys and human design. I said, okay, I'll do 64. And then after I did that, I started kind of channeling their stories and writing their stories down. And I could feel like they each captured an archetype. They each reflected an archetype. And then I thought, oh, what if I paired this with the gene keys? And so that's when I started to weave the gene keys into their stories and making sure that the gift and the shadow and the Siddhic words, the Siddhi is kind of that, the more sort of oneness related divine expression of these particular archetypes come in. And and then I thought, oh, how can I use this to serve other people? That's always been my thing. Like, I'll do something for myself and then I'll find out, oh, maybe this could help someone else. And then it turns into something else. And so then it became the Oracle deck, and then a coloring book, and then a coloring project.
Is that one behind you?
Yes, that's one behind me. Yeah.
So which one is that?
Oh, that one is here. I even have, oh wait, do I have my book? Yeah. That's the 13.
Number 13.
Number 13. And the gift is discernment. The shadow is discord. And the Siddhi is empathy. And I don't know, do you want me to read a story or not right now?
No, we don't. We don't have enough time for that.
Okay.
Just very quickly before the break. So tell us about the wheel. How does that connect?
Oh,
Wheel of integrity.
The wisdom wheel of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, this was a course that I taught and a book that I wrote that was using the wisdom keepers as teachers to help us find a way to walk through this very complex and wounded world of ours with integrity, right? With integrity. And I'm trying to, this is just so you can see, this is that book.
Mm.
This is that book. And I'm just going to remind myself. Okay, so for example, it's very important as we walk through this life that we practice loving kindness. But if all we have is loving kindness and we don't have healthy self-respect, we become codependent, overgiving. We don't have boundaries, right? So there's this access point between loving kindness and self-respect that is very important for us. And then, but if we only have self-respect and we're not kind, like, I don't know if you've ever had that experience where someone is like, you know, hey, I'm just going to be here for myself, and they're very honest, but there is no sense of like what their impact is like. That's not good either, right? So there's this really important balance. I'm just really simplifying it for you. And then on this side, there's courageous self-trust. And I think at this time too, we need to do that. You know, there's a lot of baloney coming in our direction, a lot of untruths, and a lot of pressure to just follow the orders and comply. And many of us need to find that courage inside to be able to act and to speak our truth and to stand up to totalitarian influences, whether they're the obvious kind or the subtle kind. And I think we're experiencing both at this time in the world. And then to balance off courageous self-trust, we also need reverent surrender, right? Because if all we're doing is imposing, you know, being courageous and like, this is what I want, we're pushing through, there's no humility, right? And there's no sense of, there is something perfect also happening in this world that we need to surrender to. And so anyway, that's kind of the wheel of integrity. I'm giving you like a really simple version of it, but like finding that kind of internal cross inside of ourselves and using the wisdom keepers to support us. And then at the heart of it is the creative imagination. Because really, in the end, our job is to be the weavers. It's not like, balance isn't something that's static. It's not like, oh, we're right in the middle and we stay right there. No, it's often we're going back and forth. We get a little too kind, and then we have to come back into self-respect. We surrender a little bit too much, and then we have to find our ground, and we have to say, yeah, but this is not okay. This is something I'm willing to stand for and stand up for. So that's a short version of it.
That's a really interesting point, to go to the break-in, because I think we are all being called, to examine what is it we stand for, and are we going to stand up for it?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is inspirational artist, author, teacher, creator of the popular Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck, and collaborator in the Dream Ark project with Richard Rudd. And I'm talking about Rosy Aronson, not Richard Rudd. And we're discussing how to discover our inner wisdom keeper and bloom into our authentic selves. We'll be back after the break. Stay tuned.
Times TV.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Times flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who have walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene Keys is basically the code book of life. In the Gene Keys, the book is made up of these 3 levels: shadows, gifts, and siddhis. And the journey is through those 3 levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the siddhi. And the siddhis are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Rosy Aronson, the Dream Ark. The Dream Ark is hailed as the ultimate antidote for these troubled times. Why?
Well, okay. There's a lot of change going on. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of change and there's a lot of overwhelm. A lot of people are feeling completely overwhelmed by so much suffering happening. That's like the word that comes to me. And so much bombardment of narratives trying to capture our minds and tell us what is real. And now we have AI stepping into the mix, which is going to make it even harder for us to discern what is real from what is not real. And so this whole question of authenticity comes up as well. And I feel that one of the biggest gifts of the Dream Ark is to help people navigate change and to deal with overwhelm by the cultivation of their intuition, basically. It's like a training ground for the intuition. And when, without it, when we're overwhelmed, we're really in trouble. So that's one thing I would say. Also, and this is also connected to, the technology that's coming in and taking over. The Dream Ark reminds us that we are a technology. We are an incredibly wise, capable, adaptive technology that we need to get more in touch with. And that nature is technology, right? So it's really like it helps us cultivate this deep and trusting relationship with the web of life. And so that includes our own true nature. It includes our natural surroundings, the animals, the plants, the soil, the minerals. And it also includes all of the other human beings in this world. And those who may not necessarily be people who we naturally feel connected to. And that feels to be like a really important practice for all of us right now, too, is how can we open our hearts and remain connected even to people who might think differently than us, who might have different lifestyles than us, who might be on the opposite side of the political spectrum than us. If we're not able to do that, we're really in trouble as a planet, as a species. So that's another thing that I think the Dream Ark is helping us with. And then another thing I would say is the Dream Ark, it brings more awareness into our nighttime dreams, and it helps us see that we are actually living inside of a dream, and to experience the additional meaning, the symbolism, the beauty, the magic of our everyday lives. So it's a dream technology, really, that we can bring into our nighttime, but we also bring into our daytime. And it adds I don't know. Should I stop talking? I can keep going, but those are the things that first come to me, and there's more.
It is a massive, extensive, profound body of work. And when I look at it, I think, wow, how did this come about? What was the original inspiration for it?
Yeah. Okay. So, you know how you were saying that one thing can lead to the other, like these ever expanding concentric circles. Okay. So you can look at, my life, everybody's life does that, right? We all have this core and we're just kind of rippling out. If we follow that authentic thread of our creativity, our imagination, we allow our relationships to feed and inspire us. But I'll talk about the gene keys, right? Because the gene keys began with Richard Rudd. And he started with a profound contemplation of the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And he just unleashed his imagination. And it became this giant synthesis of, and anybody who's read or looked at the Gene Keys book, it's big and it's very, very deep. And the tool that he used was the art of contemplation, to just sit with these concepts and then let them unfold inside of him and then in his life. And then there was like a feedback loop that happened, and it just got richer and richer and richer. Now, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, or the codons in our DNA, whatever you want to, however, there are many, the keys on a piano key. It's a very sacred and scientific number. And what Richard ended up doing was kind of following those 64 through a variety of streams. The Dream Ark is one stream. It's looking at the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching through the prism of animal archetypes. And so also in the gene keys, you have the shadow, gift, and city, which is that more divine component, right? Shadow is what happens when we're coming from a place of fear. How we express ourselves. Gift is what happens when we're coming from a place of service. And city is what happens when we dissolve into the all. It's like a flavor of love, you could say. There are 64 flavors of love. And so in the Dream Ark, those 3 tiers got put into sort of like the underworld category. So that's underworld creatures, insects and reptiles and fish and stuff like that. And then we've got the middle worlders, who are the mammals, and then we have the vision keys. And those are the birds who bring in visions from above. And so we end up with 192 creatures. And there are 3 for each of these 64 keys. So the life keys, the vision keys, and the fear keys. And so why am I saying all this? Because that's how it started. It started where Richard applied his imaginative, contemplative gift to these 192 animals and allowed them to just kind of turn into something called the Dream Ark Animal Codex. And after he had started with that, I mean, he had been, that was like years ago, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago now already, that he started working with that. And I believe he worked with a man named Peter, in a workshop, kind of a shamanic man in the UK many years ago. And then I think it kind of went on pause for a while until he called me in. And so what we were working with was sort of the beginning of this codex. And then when he invited me in, he got me, right? So I'm an expressive arts therapist, and I'm very much into engaging people in very practical ways, and also inviting in the village. Right? Because for me, when we think about the dream time, we all share it. It's a collective thing. And I think Richard is very much on the same page. So the 2 of us ended up working with the team of 4, with Sally Middleton, our Voyager, our first Voyager, and Elijah Parker, our wizard. And Richard was like the sage, and I was the guide. And then we had a bigger team inside of Gene Keys of amazing creative people, including Matthew Ashdown, that I'll be co-hosting with Richard together with in the retreat that's coming up. And then we brought in contributors, musicians and visual artists and storytellers and wisdom keepers, literal wisdom keepers. I think we have about 15 guest wisdom keepers from around the world representing different traditions. Because we don't, the Dream Ark is a synthesis. We're not claiming to be experts in any one wisdom keeping tradition. That's why we want to provide a platform for wisdom keepers who've been holding these traditions their entire lives and probably lifetimes with their lineages. So it became like this giant village. And when you enter the Dream Ark, it's like, I don't like the word game, but it is a little bit like that, in the sense that you're given all of these options. I think you in a conversation we had, you talked about the adventure books that you could read, and you can
choose your own adventures. Yeah.
Choose your own. Yes, it's choose your own adventure, using your intuition, using the web of life as a container, and then these different categories, which are kind of like life categories, like aspects of life, of the human condition. So there are the leapers and the messengers and the healers and the unifiers and the tricksters and the laughers and the hunters and the warriors. And, there are 12 of them. And there are different times and different, at different points of our lives where we need different things, right? It's a little bit like that wheel of integrity as well. Like sometimes we need to really go through a deep healing process. And other times we need to be warriors. We need to find out, well, what do we stand for? What are we willing to speak out for? What's a cause that's worth dedicating our lives to? And then there are times when we're supposed to be, receiving messages. What is the world telling me? What is my next step, right? So the Dream Ark, through the intuition, guides people through their life journey, where the landscape of their life is actually where they're getting their clues. And then they can use the codex. They can use, I don't know, we have like, over 100, no, probably over 200 experiential invitations that help people get offline and out into their lives. Go up a mountain, walk a labyrinth, create a meal for your community, have a fire ceremony, lots and lots of, go on a pilgrimage, go on a mini vacation, watch a funny movie that makes you laugh, right? There are all these dive-in invitations that people can also use their intuition, choosing symbols, not words, to guide them in the right direction. And then all of this inspiration from the wisdom keepers and the artists and the musicians and the storytellers. It's just this rich tapestry and so much fun.
It reminds me of, being on living the Wizard of Oz story, or Alice in
Yes.
Wonderland, and you're just taken out of yourself into this incredible place, and there's all these things, that are open to you, all these experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's working with the codex, with the totem codex, is supposed to be a powerful responsibility. Why is that?
Are you talking about the Dream Ark Animal Codex, or anytime you work with animals?
No, the Dream Ark Animal. Specifically, I read that it is a powerful responsibility, and it's something to do with reprogramming Dreamtime itself.
Yeah, that sounds like something that Richard would say. I wish Richard was here, because I'm sure he would do justice to that question much more than me.
Can we reprogram Dreamtime?
Can we reprogram Dreamtime? Yes, I think we can. I think we can. I might, that might be more Richard's words. I would say more like, we can co-create inside of Dreamtime. We can allow our Dreamtime to help us co-create inside of our everyday life, that we can have an ongoing communication with. The dream, and life is the dream, right? We're all awake in the dream, and getting more and more aware of that. I think maybe that's where the responsibility comes in, is to understand. See, it's kind of funny, because in a way, the Dream Ark allows us to play more, right? It's about playfulness, discovery, adventure, trust, generosity, but it's also very deep. So it can also help us play with very deep material, and that's when the responsibility comes in for me. So, for example, over the past couple of years, the Dream Ark has held me. It's been this loving, magical, deep container for a big life transition that I've moved through, from being married for 30 years to being single. And it's taken me, the animals that I've worked with have taken me through this profound healing and grief journey. And it's so funny. I was just in ceremony this past weekend, and I was thinking about all the animals that have helped me over these past 2 years take responsibility for this process that I hadn't planned on, but happened. Including, like, I called in the eagle, which is all about truth, and I went on, and then I was in the hunters category, and I was hunting for the truth of forgiveness. That was like a very big contemplation in my life for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go on and on about that, but I just wanted to say that just in this ceremony, which felt in a way like allowing myself to really let go at the deepest level, I got the lamb, and the lamb is all about new beginnings. Like, it was, and I felt like the Dream Ark is kind of been marking my journey. Each animal saying, now it's time to go deep into the grief. Now it's time. For example, I got the cicada, which actually is, I don't know if you know that it's a once in a 218 year situation going on with the cicada.
Right now, yes.
Yeah, right now, I mean, it's such an
Yeah.
exciting time. But for people who don't know, within the Dream Ark, the cicada has a lot to do with releasing the voice, sound healing, the power of sound. And so for a long time, I was working with the cicada, and I would sit by my altar and I would sing this one song by Sinead O'Connor called Thank You for Hearing Me. And at the very end of the song, she's like, thank you for hearing me, for being with me, for loving me, da, da, da. And then at the end, it's thank you for breaking my heart. And I would sing, yeah. And I would sing that song every day with my little cicada at my altar. And every day I would cry. I would just like cry and cry and cry. But I knew I was done with the cicada when I could sing that song without crying. So do you see what I'm saying? It's more than just, oh, I pick an animal and I'm just gonna read about it. It's not that. You work with it at a very deep level. And for me, that's responsibility, like the ability to respond with the fullness of my heart, my imagination, really looking what's happening in my life and allowing my life to partner with the animal, inviting the animal into my dreams, letting the animal speak to me that way. Some people remember their dreams, some people don't. A lot of people, when they do the Dream Ark, start to enhance their dream recall, and we have tips for that as well. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's kind of what comes up for me.
Tell me about the retreats, because although this, you sign up for it and you go on this journey and you've got access to it for as long as you want to have access to it. In
Yeah.
fact, you could continue doing different journeys
Yes.
every week, every month, every year.
Yeah.
Why are you doing retreats? What are the retreats?
Okay. And I will say I'm in this for life. I mean, every time I do a new retreat, I start again. So this retreat is an initiation. And for me, it's a response to the overwhelm of life and sometimes the overwhelm of the Dream Ark. So some people, when they come in, they're like, oh my God, this is so big. Where do I start? How do I do it? So the retreat is an initiation. It's 3 months long. And we very gently take people in. We introduce them to the main concepts. We connect them with the codex. We help them set up their life web like this, right? I don't know if you can see this, with all the different categories, their altar, their journal. We connect them with the 3 portal creatures. So there's the woodpecker that kind of symbolizes the portal into the vision keys, which has to do with rhythm. There's the camel that connects us with the middle world, that has to do with resilience. And then we have the praying mantis, which connects people with the underworld, which has to do with ritual, right? So these are pieces of the Dream Ark that go all the way through ritual, resilience, and rhythm. And then we connect people with the very first module or groupings of animals, which are the guardians. And there are 12 of the guardians. And these guardians are here to protect us and to hold the container of our entire journey. And the lamb is actually one of the guardians. And the lion was another guardian I had the first time I did the Dream Ark. The second time I did it, I called in the eagle. So every time it's different. But anyway, and once people call in their guardian, everybody initiates their journey with a ritual, with a unique ritual to them. And it can be super simple or it can be very elaborate. We give lots of ideas. And so by the time people get through the first 3 months, they're grounded in the Dream Ark. They have an understanding of the language. They have understanding of the layout. And they're ready to initiate their very unique journey through the other 12 categories. I mentioned some of those before. And then at the end, okay, and anyway, I can say, like, as they move through all those categories, they call in at least one animal that represents the healer, their healer animal, right? Their trickster animal, their unifier animal, for example. There's lots of oracles too. Life is an oracle, so it could be a grasshopper jumps on your lap, and then that becomes your oracle. Then that's where you're going. And the grasshopper is a leaper, so that might tell you, okay, now I'm ready to go into the leapers.
Yeah.
Or there are actual oracles inside of the course that can help direct people. So then, in a way, we kind of call in a council of animals that hold us through our life. And then at the end, we call it a kin, which is like our animal for life.
Or life.
So, yeah. So what were you going to say?
So I was going to say, so you do the retreat and then you've got access to everything.
You have access to everything.
And you start your journey on your own after that.
Yes, you start your journey on your own, and we're really working on, this is new. Like Gene Keys has been around for a long time. The Dream Ark is a baby, right? So we're learning as we go about what kind of support and holding people need. So we're working on a personalized email system that can help people move through, and we're encouraging people to go through it in groups, smaller groups together. We also have community calls every month. There's a forum inside the actual course. Now people are beginning to share inside of Gene Keys Global on Facebook. I know people have mixed feelings about Facebook, but we're really working on holding people so that they are encouraged to keep going. But my feeling is, or my experience listening to people, is that once they get in, it's forever.
Yeah. How often do you do these retreats?
Well, we've only done one before. That was last fall. And so now we're doing one this summer. And my guess is we'll do one a year, maybe two. I'm not sure. We're still.
So when in the summer are you doing it?
We're starting July 15th, and it's 3 months, and we end with a giant celebration. And I just want to say Grandmother Flor de Mayo and Grandmother Sasa will be two of our guests inside of the retreat that we're super excited about. And this particular retreat, every retreat calls in an animal to be like the overseer of the retreat. Last time it was the skylark, and this time it's going to be the dragon. Because we're in the years.
That's my animal.
Is that your animal?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about it?
No, just I have this big attraction to dragons.
Interesting.
I'm sure I've flown on them at some point.
Yes, I'm sure you have too. And in a way, we're all being invited to ride the dragon's back these days. Yes. So let's do it together and receive the support.
Yeah. Well, very quickly before we close, because I'm just looking at my watch to see if we've got time. There's also a special Dream Ark mini-series that you've launched, The Jaguar's Journey, which is a free course that people can sample. And this is starting very soon. Do you know when?
It's here. It's ready. It's available.
It's ready. Oh, it's something. Okay, so it's not timed. People can access it now.
They can access it at any time, and it is so good. It is like such a great way to enter into the Dream Ark realm, and it's manageable, it's doable, and it's fun, and it's deep. And the people who are doing it are giving us feedback, and they're really having big revelations. Yeah.
So where do people go to be able to access that? Can they do it through the Gene Keys site or a Dream Ark site?
It will be through the Gene Keys site, I believe. I think we might have given you the. I feel like we gave you the
link.
I think we did.
You may well have done.
Let me see if I can find it in my.
It's not showing up here. Let me have a look.
Okay, here it is. It's genekeys.com/c/jaguars-journey.
Perfect. Okay. So, Dream Keys at genekeys.com/c/jaguars-journey.
Yes, I believe that's it.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Rosy, we're out of time now, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sandie. You know I'm a big fan of yours.
Likewise. So you can learn more about Rosy's work at her website, rosyaronson.com, and you can also look at wisdomkeepers.net. That's it for this week. We'll be back at the same time next week with another edition of What Is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you again to Rosy Aronson.
Thank you.